Good morning, Nashville. How is everybody? Happy Friday. Do we even know what day of the week it is anymore with COVID? Like, is it Tuesday, Saturday? I seem to be working every day, so I don't even know. I'm going to do a quick screen share here, and my 10-month-old St. Bernard's going to say hello as well. This is us, first annual Nashville Commercial Real Estate Virtual Summit. Yes, Luna Bear, we'll get to you. I want to thank all these sponsors. We couldn't do this without you. This is a fantastic group of sponsors. Out of this, we had to pivot to a virtual events just like everybody else. We know it's not ideal. We know we'd all rather be getting together, but without sponsors supporting us in this way, this would be impossible to do. So thank you to all these folks. It's greatly appreciated. This is us, RE Journals. If you're new to us, we have 6 publications in 17 states, and we're going to do over 200 events this year. In fact, on January 7th at our kickoff 2021 event, hopefully you join us for that, Dr. Dotzer. We're going to reach our 50,000th set of eyeballs since we went virtual for COVID in March. I'm going to turn this over. We've got a fantastic keynote here from Susan. She's going to do opening remarks. I'm going to let her have the screen, and I will bow out. New panelists, make sure that you turn your camera and audio off until your panel begins. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, good morning, Nashville, and thank you for attending this 2020 Nashville Commercial Real Estate Virtual Summit. As you said, presented by Midwest Real Estate News. Seems 2020 is going to be remembered as the virtual year, the year of Zoom with the catchphrase, "Hey, you're on mute." Thankfully, the Nashville commercial real estate market has not been on mute or pause, and our progress cannot be masked. So I'm excited to hear what today's panelists have to say about our market. I'm Susan Ahlheit, president of CRE Nashville, also a partner at TSCG. And CRE Nashville is happy to support this event, and I'm thrilled to have this time to share more with you about CRE. So CRE Network was founded in 1989 to bring together women in commercial real estate across the United States. Today, with 12,000 diverse members, both women and men connecting globally, CRE Network has become the premier business network in commercial real estate. CRE Network's mission is to transform the industry by advancing women globally. CRE Network works to achieve this mission through 4 focus areas. I'd like to discuss those briefly with you. First is our business networking. So facilitating business networking and deal making among our multidisciplinary membership is the cornerstone of our organization. We deliver impactful networking opportunities, including leadership summits, the CRE Network convention, webinars, and leadership certificate program. Members have the exclusive access to our CRE Biz technology platform, which serves as a membership directory, business resource center, referral center, and a personal marketing tool. Second, CRE is the world's leading producer of research on gender and diversity in commercial real estate. Our industry research produces papers annually and a benchmark study every 5 years, delivering data, action items to advance women and Black, Indigenous, and people of color in commercial real estate and positively impact the industry. The latest CRE Network benchmark study was released in September, and it examines compensation and career satisfaction, advancement barriers, differentiated by gender and diversity within the industry. I encourage you to visit CRE Network's website and download a copy of this important study. Third is our leadership development. Building effective leaders is the key to advancing the commercial real estate industry. CRE Network dedicates significant resources to providing members with a high level of membership development training and opportunity to serve on global boards and committees to develop and hone their leadership skills. And fourth is our career outreach. CRE Network and our foundation are committed to bringing more women into commercial real estate by creating programs that educate women and girls about the career opportunities available to them, supporting college-level commercial real estate education through scholarships and providing mentorships to those in the industry. So CRE Network is a global organization with 77 major markets across North America, the UK, India, and other locations across the globe. As more businesses and transactions are going global, it's imperative that CRE Network and all women in commercial real estate are at the forefront of going global and the expansion of resources and opportunities. Members join CRE in 2 ways: through local chapters such as CRE Nashville, or as an at-large member. But anytime you join CRE, you are a CRE Network member. So CRE Network has unique multiple disciplinary memberships that can take you through every part of a commercial real estate transaction. We have members who do business across the network each day, and they always look to a CRE member first. Nearly half of CRE Network's members have 15 years of experience, and more than a third have 20 plus years of experience. So when you're doing business with a member of CRE, you know you're working with another seasoned professional. Just a little bit about the CRE Network Foundation. Scholarships, we give away $5,000 scholarships every year. And to date, we've given away $1 million. Talk about an impact. Our industry research, we're the sole organization delivering data and statistics that demonstrate the continued need to focus on gender and diversity in our industry. And as I mentioned, our CRE Careers, UCRE, these are the programs that are a key way that we're building a pipeline of women by educating girls and young women about careers in commercial real estate. If you're not yet a member of CRE, I invite you to visit our website at crenashville.org or contact me directly. The new membership year begins January 1st, so now's a great time to join. But importantly, everyone benefits when you also get your company, your leadership, or your colleagues involved in CRE. If your company has a diversity program, a special interest group, or women's initiative, CRE should be your first stop for partnership and resources. CRE Network's training, leadership development, and industry research can be applied to any company programming and training. And support of CRE positions your company as a leader in supporting DEI and the advancement of women. I encourage you again to visit crenashville.org for more resources and information. Thank you for allowing me this time to share more about CRE and CRE Nashville. And I look forward to hearing what our panelists have to say about our great market.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you. We're big supporters of CRE. I hope all of you that have logged into our events this year, we've had CRE on a lot of events and very much appreciate what you do, especially in light of all the diversity stuff that people were wanting to come together on. CRE gives people that outlet to make that happen and actually make it all work. So thank you for that. If you're on the next panel, start activating your cameras and your microphones. Here's Kyle. He's our moderator, right? So you're ready to roll?
I am. Good morning.
Okay, let me do a couple housekeeping items. Before you do that, I want to show you a couple things. One is our virtual lobby. So this is where you can learn about these speakers. So here's Susan, and you'll see below her name is a little button for LinkedIn. That's where you can find her bio and connect with her on LinkedIn, learn more about her. You see here's panel one, all these awesome gentlemen. And then you see below that is the agenda for what they're going to talk about. And you'll see some stuff, upcoming events, and learn more about the companies that have sponsored this event. A good source of stuff. So that's hopefully how you got to this. If you can't find it, I'll put the link in the chat room. A couple last things. Number one is make sure you mute your microphone when you're not talking. We've all learned all these Zoom lessons this year. That's a big one, but it does help cut down noise for other people and make sure that we can hear and see them. If you want to stay on this panel, gentlemen, afterwards, turn your microphone and your camera off and you can stay on and be silent and not be seen or heard. So take it away, Kyle. I'll be here in the background. If you need me, just yell, "Hey, Todd, I can't get my PowerPoint up," or something else is going on. We got a glitch. I don't know. I'm here for that. Thank you all.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd. And thank you so much, Susan, for that explanation about CRE. I hope that you're willing to accept my LinkedIn request. I want to learn a lot more about that. So looking forward to that. My name is Kyle Camp. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for BCI Build Central. A little background here. About 20 years in the business, Build Central has been in providing construction lead and information around the firms and developers that are bringing forth all commercial projects. Specifically, we bring details together and present that in a tool called multifamilydata.com. Pleased to have the opportunity actually to spend some time with these three gentlemen, and look forward to learning specifically about the Nashville market and continue to expand upon what they've taught me already in our first intro calls. So without further ado, we'll get started. I'd like to have each one of them kind of do a self-introduction, let the expert talk about themselves, and I'll just kind of push that out as we get started. Also, gentlemen, as we just, I'd love you to take a little second here after your kind of couple-minute self-introduction and your background and tell me just a little bit about one or two items that you think this big elephant in the room, this pandemic, this COVID-19 thing that has scourged our country and globe, and share something that you think has dynamically changed for forever due to COVID-19 as it relates to multifamily developments, if you could. So we'll get started first. Tarek, would you mind?
Sure. Thank you, Kyle. My name is Tarek El Gammal. I'm with Newmark. We're a global real estate services company with offices throughout the world. Myself and Vince Leffler run the Nashville office here. And our focus is multifamily investment sales. We also work in land sales, advising landowners as well as developers match up for development opportunities. One of the things I think I'd focus on with COVID, it's a little counter, but since COVID has occurred in our firm, we had a tremendous outpouring of interest from our clients to have regularly scheduled calls. So we get all of our brokers throughout the United States on these calls, and we've had up to 100 at this point since March when the epidemic started. And it was really a roundtable discussion through all markets, and the client chose which markets they wanted to speak about. And these are international asset managers, private equity firms, fund managers that generally, many of them have focused on the gateway markets, the 24-hour cities along the coast, including Chicago. And almost without exception, on each of these calls, we've been singled out as a market they want to talk to, as these firms have, their thinking has evolved out of really having high concentrations of investments in these gateway markets and focusing now on these growth markets throughout the Southeast and Southwest. And Nashville is fortunate to be one of those markets. So that is without question one of the things I think that has changed. That trend started before COVID, but it's certainly accelerated as a result. So we've got groups that have not invested in this market now looking to do so. And I think the COVID epidemic in a strange way accelerated that to the benefit of our market. But I think ultimately, I do believe that we will get back to business as usual, and that all the cities in the US will really work towards a more vibrant urban setting that they were moving towards before COVID. I think the fact that we came up with a vaccine so quickly that I really do believe, I'm an optimist, but I do believe that we will get back to business as usual, and you'll see less change than we might have expected going into this.
Yeah, thanks, Tarek. And it has been kind of, as we discussed, a tale of two ends of the pole, right? Some things have been just catalyzed during this process, and some things stymied. And so those frequent calls, I'm sure, were valued. Let's move on to Andrew. Andrew, with Westgate, would you give us a brief introduction and again address the question if you can?
Yeah, of course. My name is Andrew Coulton. I've been in the industry for a little over 3 years now. And I've actually had the fortune to work with my father. He started the company Westgate Enterprises about 13 years ago. And it's been a really interesting journey learning from him. And we are a full service company. So we pretty much cover like anything a client could need. So we like our boutique aspect and the ability that gives us to serve our clients. I have actually had a pretty good journey in multifamily. So it sort of happened randomly. And then I just fell in love with it. So what we've been seeing in regards to COVID are some interesting developments. Mainly the work from home is what I'm most interested in, and how that impacts future developments. I've talked to several multifamily developers, and they are actually changing their designs to deal with this potential work from home. So if 25% of the workforce doesn't end up going back to the office space, how does that impact development design? So that's one thing I'm very interested in. I'm optimistic that they're going to be able to handle it. So that's pretty much all I've got to say.
Yeah, it's awesome, Andrew. That dynamic is one of those things that catalyzed this work from home, and many companies were considering it, but now they've kind of been forced to do it. it's going to change a lot in that employment relationship in that space. So multifamily can certainly play a part. I look forward to learning more from
Yeah, for
on
sure.
that. So, and then last we'd like to invite Evan to do the same thing. Evan, if you could get a little background and what's COVID changed in your world?
Absolutely, Kyle. Evan Vlaeminck, GCI Residential. We are a 60-year-old owner, developer, manager, and all-around commercial property company based in Beechwood, Ohio. Current focus is in the southeastern part of the United States. We are, I guess I would call us a little bit of a neophyte to the Nashville area. We are just about ready to go into the ground with our first project, and constantly looking for other opportunities with Andrew and Westgate, and in Davidson and Williamson counties in particular. In terms of how COVID has kind of, I think, irretrievably changed the market. I think at points you will find in the future companies really trying to downsize their office market and move more to the remote aspect of things. Just here locally, I have a good friend who works at a large central bank and does a lot of research with the Fortune 500s in the market, and a lot of them are really trying to bail out of as much physical office space as they can because they think they have the infrastructure now and they know this can work on a remote basis where they did not have this sampling prior to COVID. Now, what I have found personally, and I don't know if it's a little bit of the more experienced dog, but the collaborative environment really suffers. As much as you can share screens and as much as you can annotate a screen, to my mind, not being able to sit over a plan, not being able to sit in a room, and this transcends just my normal office environment on a day-to-day, but it also affects the entitlement aspect of the work I have to do. Anything from a neighborhood meeting on the front end of a project all the way through a city council board of trustees on the back end. You sometimes do need the personal affiliation and the personal presence to make it well known. Now, I think all of that will come back, and there are legal reasons for the entitlement aspect of it to come back. I do think that the office aspect of it will kind of follow the retail aspect of it in being able to be facilitated by the increasingly popular technology and the increasingly powerful technology and moving things online.
Yeah, Evan, it's it's going to be interesting how this plays out. I look forward to building and learning that with you. So we've kind of taken a look at this overall global aspect. We can't just avoid it. It's significant, and certainly for the audience, we want to start to narrow this down in now to Nashville and talk about the specific market where the three of you are certainly experts. So I went into the database in our tool a little bit, and I mean, we're tracking 342 projects that are in planning stages, multifamily related around the Nashville area in the 13 counties that would be the MSA. And we've got 338 currently under construction. That's a very vibrant multifamily marketplace. So a lot to talk about excitement. And so what we're going to do now is try and break out the discussion a little bit into three primary topics. We're going to talk about the development side, kind of current and forecasting, kind of what's happening there. We're going to talk a little bit about the operations side, how that's been affected, what you guys see in the Nashville market. And then we'll talk a little bit about the capital market too at the end, and then certainly open to questions from anybody on the group. So if you have those, please chat those in, and we'll do our best to address those as we've all planned. When we take a look at the development side, Evan, we'll start with you and just talk a little bit about us. You've got this kind of regional aspect area that you can kind of see around the Southeast. How does Nashville compare in the cost of doing business kind of thing? I mean, you mentioned this kind of can't get the public audience discussions, they're just things we haven't thought about that might be affecting currently in this pandemic, which may translate out for another 6 to 9 months, maybe.
Right.
So what does that look like? How is cost of business in Nashville relative to others?
So, cost of doing business start on the front end. I mean, it's all driven by the land, and you have certain markets that we have looked in and now are involved in Williamson and Davidson counties where that land price is pricey because there are focus of certain areas East Nashville is kind of a coming area. Germantown was an area we thought we should have landed in now probably, I don't know, 5 years ago when we first started looking at Nashville. And when we consider a market, we do take our time and really peruse a market before we decide where we want to be. We ended up finding our first project in Franklin, and it will be a fabulous project, but it is pricing land. And we certainly do have a price point we need to see certainly in our model. Being at the top of the market, we generally can afford a little more. So moving down, the line into services and things of that nature that we have to use to support our development, to support our purchase, to support our due diligence and vetting. I would say Nashville is probably pretty much on par with a lot of the other markets we work in. I mean, we are in Charlotte, which is a pretty good analog to Nashville, I think. Raleigh, maybe a little less so. And then you move into Florida, which is certainly its own market in a lot of forms and fashions. But the kind of soft end, for lack of a better word, of the consultant business, I think is pretty much fair traded in a lot of circumstances. And there's a lot of specificity you can add to that with master services agreements and things of that nature. So I think Nashville is fairly typical would be the word I would apply. Now, getting into the trades. And Kyle, I don't want to step into your camp here, but no pun intended. But there are a lot of situations in Nashville where there's just not enough folks in certain trades when the market is so frothy as it certainly is. There are certain particulars where we've gone out and looked at jobs and because of local peculiarities, there might be only, let's say, one fire prevention contractor that will do work there, because they're the only ones that understand and can work with the local folks. So that's kind of a unique situation. The rising tide lifts all boats, and in a frothy market, contractors are always pricey, but I think we found that to be a little bit more so and a little bit more peculiar to Nashville. And Nashville, particularly down in the Williamson County, some of the geography and some of the geology of where we are, that's a blasting market. And you always need a special skill set to be able to attack a soil that way. And you just accept that. That it's going to be a part of your project. Charlotte can also have that same peculiarity, but you're not going to find that obviously in a Florida or a Charleston, where we also operate.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say not a lot of alligators though.
No, you're not trapping that gator and relocating them. Certainly.
Awesome. Tarek, talk to us a little bit about what you've been seeing and kind of this activity and transactions and, as it's kind of went through 2020. Evan mentioned land acquisition costs. What are your thoughts? What do you guys see in there? Anything you can add to that topic?
Sure. In March, we had a few deals under agreement. And when COVID hit, there were some price adjustments on those trades that actually closed. Other deals got kicked down the road. Other deals fell out of contract. But up till recently, they've been picked back up. So I'd say you probably had a 6-month pause in the market in some cases. In other cases, you had price adjustments that allowed them to move forward on time. But as Evan pointed out, the municipal approvals have really slowed. And so getting to a permitting stage is taking longer than it has already in a slower than normal process. The departments have been overloaded leading into this, and then going virtual, all of those systems and adjusting to it has slowed everything down. So it slowed the development process down a bit, but now, you're always looking out 2 years with development. So we're seeing a robust activity throughout the city, the outlying counties, as well as the urban core, which is already experiencing, a pretty significant amount of supply under construction. So there's still plenty of groups that are coming in, looking at building on an FAR basis versus a land basis. So they're looking at the value of the land now based on the amount of approvals they can build on that piece of property as opposed to the cost per foot. So that's really evolved in our market over the last 3 to 5 years. That's sort of a new thing that's occurring, and there's no signs of that slowing down.
Yeah. Awesome. Andrew, any thoughts you want to tag in there? If not, I got another question I want to tee up for you.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with Tarek and Evan. I mean, that's basically what we're seeing as well. It's about entitlements, like the ability to get them, the likelihood of getting them is impacting the price point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really good point you made. And it's a huge hurdle to get over. And as far as he was talking about deals falling, out, or for whatever reason, be it COVID or something else. I mean, that's what I feel like my job is right now during COVID, is like a firefighter, because you're constantly putting out fires between your client, the seller and the buyer, and like having to get in the middle and be like, okay, let's all think about this rationally, and just try to, actually get the deal done, because they're typically really good deals, but everyone's, in a weird place right now. So it's everything. Yeah.
Basically. Anxiety levels are high, and it's
extreme.
and we've all talked about this competitive forces, right? Scarcity drives competition. So what would you suggest? What's some what's some attributes, what's some ways to kind of secure development deals in a competitive market that we would expect you currently pulling out in?
You've really got to, in my opinion, you've got to get out there and network hard, because like there are a lot of good land deals available that have development, potential. And of course you've got to vet them, but these are people that may or may not want to sell. So you're not going to just get, deals that are on the market all the time. The ability to network, connect with the right people, and then once the deal is even about to take place, get them in contact with the right local engineers, architects, political, maneuvering, individuals that can actually get it to the finish line. That's like, what I focus on is just connecting the right people together. And at this point in my career, that's the best thing I can do.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen a lot too. We track a lot of contacts that are at certain entities, and across the spectrum, including in real estate development, the transition has been pretty remarkable. People adjusting and moving and transferring, and what seat they sat in 9 months ago has changed so many times, and sort of navigating this fog of war, having some
yeah, I'd say like the last big run up in supply we saw was 15 when deals were closing, and the market got redlined from a lot of lenders because they were worried about supply concerns of stuff delivering in 16 and 17. But the composition of that product was more mid-rise wood frame. And so now we're in an environment where you're looking at the composition being type 1 high-rise construction in the downtown core, and then now people moving out to the suburbs finding surface park product that's 4-story, wood frame. So it's two ends of the barbell as opposed to what you saw more sort of in the middle the last 5 years ago.
Yeah, the wise. Well, let's talk about what's going forward. You kind of tied on to some trends, and let's talk a little bit about what we see coming in the near to mid future for Nashville. Evan, let's start. You brought up this discussion about some design considerations in your opening thing, and you talked about that. How are you looking as you go forward in projections and trends, maybe on design or use cases or things like that would be specifics you could talk to?
One of the things that is impacted, and it really is kind of a COVID-driven work at home type of an alternative. We have seen even in the pre-COVID last 2 to 3 years, we have seen an increasing need and an increasing market-sensitive need for us to provide co-working opportunities. Normally, that has been an adjunct to our clubhouse, to our leasing office area, which kind of generally functions in more of a business environment. You don't have people lifting weights in the rec center you don't have anybody in the pool on a beautiful day. So enhancing the co-working aspects and opportunities as part of our communities has been really a focus. What has happened over this year is the need to push the ability to co-work almost into the unit. So you'll have a unit that may be a two-bedroom, let's say, and you'll need to be able to develop a space that kind of flexes out. And that can flex out as an additional bedroom, but that can also flex out into an office. And in some cases, people demand those offices flex out into a space that can be accessible from the outside by a private entrance. So you've almost got the what has been the home office type of situation with a private entrance in certain communities, moving its way into the multifamily market in a different capacity, in a different design attitude, in a size, certainly, because you're talking about adding another 200, 300 square feet onto a unit, which is considerable. So you're increasing the size by 20%, let's say, depending on whether it's a 2 or 3 bedroom. So then, that necessarily transcends into, okay, what different types of utilities, what different types of infrastructure capacities do you need to provide to that flex unit? And then it even moves outside of the market, outside of the unit. What do you need to provide in terms of parking? What do you need to provide if you've got a true mixed use environment? What kind of, let's say, retail and or office tenants, can you bring in to truly support that? And it is a good holistic approach to a multifamily community, but it's an aspect that has been more emphasized lately, and has been more emphasized specifically into the unit as opposed to kind of a general opportunity. Leave your unit, go to a co-working space, have a cup of coffee, have a meeting conference room available to you. Now people want to put an office, to some extent, a true office in a multifamily unit.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that, Andrew or Tarek? Anything you've seen design-wise, space utilization-wise?
So I had the privilege of living in a very functional, modern development downtown. This is an apartment complex, Capitol View. They had an incredibly amazing amenity package. I think it was probably the best in the city at the time. And it included a large amount of work from home space that you could just first come, first serve. Conference rooms, computers, Apple and PC. It was really interesting to actually live there for about 8 months. Because I think they were on the cutting edge, essentially, of what can be done from work from home standpoint, and these amenities were utilized as well. So it was hard to get into that conference room because people were actually using them for their companies. People were running companies out of the apartment. It was really interesting to see, and I think that's an increasing trend. And I was talking to one of my other clients the other day, and they're having to incorporate some of those aspects into the single family rental market, which is evolving pretty quickly, and actually kind of provide some of those opportunities. So you have multifamily developers traditional apartments, expanding their unit space for that flexibility for the work from home. And then you've got, the competition sort of from single family rental that is basically got more space, and they're looking at offices being built into the home. It could be a kid's bedroom, maybe, or it could be an office, so it's just an interesting trend that I'm seeing right now.
I would add the single family rental market is definitely something that's here to stay. There's a lot of capital chasing that product type, and it's driven more, not so much COVID. This was started before COVID, but it's been driven by demographics. You've got these young folks who now want to start families. They don't necessarily want to own, they want to remain mobile, and they don't necessarily see the value in home ownership that prior generations saw. A lot of them lived through the financial crisis with their parents, and saw all that equity wash away. And so having flexibility and being able to rent is a growing trend that I think will continue.
Yeah, there's no brakes on it, and the pressure we're getting from our interactions to find and track and deliver more information on those rent to own, whether they're tiny home communities even, or full suburban type build outs as well. Hey, one of the things that we talked about, I want to make sure we address about this forecasting and this building projections is this some of the entities, corporate entities that are coming into the Nashville area, and what that might do with population drivers. Andrew, I think you kind of brought that up and talked a little bit about it. Do you have any insights on that, or things that you would share that would be driving demand in the?
Yeah, when you've got Amazon, Alliance Bernstein, the Smile Direct Club, Pilot, Bridgestone, Western Express, Mitsubishi, GM, just to name a few, like making a full run. I mean, those are some major companies, and they're successful. The companies are growing, and then they're coming here. So it has a major impact on bringing this youthful population, and they come into Nashville. Maybe from Los Angeles, maybe from San Francisco, Denver, wherever it may be, New York. With Bernstein, I don't understand the Nashville market. I don't know where I want to buy my home. So what are they going to do? They're going to rent for a while until they figure out where they want to, plop down for permanently, with a mortgage, so it's a huge advantage for the multifamily developers to have these companies generating that kind of, input into the system. It's incredible. So, I mean, that alone makes me bearish for Nashville, or bullish rather. But so I just, based on simply these kinds of companies coming in, I feel very strong about the expansion of multifamily. I just don't know where all the land's going to be and how to get all the entitlements and find the deals. That's the big challenge,
Yeah.
So,
awesome. Any other last comments or thoughts, Tarek or Evan, into the forecasting, into what's going to help with the developments you see in the next couple of years that we missed? I don't want to miss on that.
I see certainly the infrastructure planning for Davidson and Williamson County is a huge aspect of what needs to happen. And, where the funding certainly is coming from in those circumstances. Now, I think, and this goes back to what Andrew just talked about, the healthy influx of major employers to augment, state government already in Nashville, to augment some more of the entertainment aspects that have been traditional parts of the Nashville business scene, are only going to amplify, the ability for really, and it is taxes at the end of the day, but public monies to pay for the infrastructure that's going to be required moving forward. I know that there are other parts of the Southeast that we operate in, and I think I'll use North Carolina maybe as an example. The DOT has been beset by probably 4 or 5 different almost cataclysmic events, one right after the other. And COVID is only the latest aspect there, which has affected immensely the ability to get any major infrastructure projects off the ground. Because in that particular circumstance, the most directly affected agency owns everything from a 4-lane superhighway down to a dirt 2 track. Following the financial ability of the market to absorb all the new employment, but then utilize the resources provided by that new employer and that new business to generate the infrastructure to work around it is going to be a really good thing to forecast down the road. It keeps impact fees fairly high. Also, if you're coming in with a multifamily development, I think certain parts, certainly Williamson County, is probably on par with Florida now, which has been, I'll use the words, famous for its impact fees historically. Yeah, certainly infrastructure funding is always going to be important. Headwinds
and tailwinds, right? And how do you navigate them? So the demand pressures are there. I mean, the core basics of my freshman son's, economics class are all there, right? The supply, the demand, there's going to be I'm just glad that there's, smart people like yourself working on those problems, right? And making sure you're on that, right? Partnering. One of the things you mentioned this infrastructure is to watch, kind of off topic, but this public-private partnership stuff really start to explode when these states' budgets are really pressured, and where that goes with infrastructure.
Yes.
Watch specifically around Nashville. All right, let's pivot just a little bit here. We can always come back with questions, but let's talk a little bit about operations. So, you have current inventory, you have current buildings. What are we seeing with anything that you could share around lease ups or openings or lease rates, and then anything specifically around? It's been in the national market quite a bit. What about the payments? Right? Rent payments. How is that doing? And what are you hearing around the national market currently? So I'll kind of toss this up to anybody, but anybody want to tackle that one first?
I'll start. One of the things we really started doing in February, and it's really, we always obviously monitor our retention and for new developments and new rollouts, you monitor the absorption. We really put more of an emphasis this time because of what we saw, the potential of the pandemic becoming, monitoring kind of within our own department here, the absorption in the markets. And the interesting thing that I saw compared to Charlotte, Raleigh, Charleston, and Florida is the ability of Nashville to take the hit that everybody expected in the early part of the pandemic in absorption of new units, and then bounce back. Essentially, knock the block off the shoulder and march forward. And it just kept and this is particular to Williamson County, but I think Davidson County also, knock the block off the shoulder and just continue to move forward with the development and the absorption of new product.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that was really the story coming in, leaving 18, coming into 19. We saw just a tremendous amount of supply hit our market. As I said before, we were redlined from lenders in 15 because of that supply that was coming, and we absorbed it faster, probably 6 months faster than any optimistic outlook from research agencies. So it was just a tremendous amount of demand that was created in that time. And I think that's what people are hanging their hats on going forward as they invest in Nashville. From an operational perspective, we've seen rents decline about 1.5% across the market. We've seen occupancies dip a bit. But when you dig down deeper and you look at how that is comprised, the downtown's taken the biggest hit, obviously, because all the amenities have been sucked out of the downtown. Nobody's going downtown to work. There's no concerts. There's no sporting events. So why live downtown and pay the big rent? So people have moved out, and there's just less demand in the downtown. So that's been the largest impact from a vacancy and rent perspective. But then as you go to the suburbs, they perform really well, with a few exceptions where there's been a lot of lease up. So you've seen some pockets where, going into COVID, there were a number of deals in lease up. And so that additional supply affected rent growth and some occupancy numbers. But ultimately, I think it's something that will pass. And it's to Evan's point, the way the market reacted from the last oversupply, I think people anticipate a similar sort of outcome for Nashville. And it's because of all the things we've talked about, just companies moving here, people moving here. It's a lifestyle city, all those sorts of things. So we lost 140,000 jobs because of COVID. We've clawed back more than half of those. They were primarily in manufacturing and leisure hospitality, and those are starting to come back. So again, I have a very optimistic perspective on this terrible tragedy and pandemic, because I do believe we're going to work back to where we were before. I mean, going into the pandemic, we were the fastest growing market in the entire country. March over March, population growth was the fastest in Nashville than anywhere else on percentage. So I think those trends will come back, and I think occupancy, rents, and the other operating fundamentals will improve along with it.
Yeah. One quick thing I can add, just going back to my Capital View, experiences. When the pandemic hit, I chose to actually, because it was so, frightening to see how many doctors and nurses were living, in that, cluster. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to get out. So I actually went and did a deal, got an Airbnb for 2 months, but I still paid my rent. Now, a lot of people wouldn't do that. A lot of people would try to fight the apartment company, and not pay their rent or get, some, kind of discount or something because of the pandemic. So it was interesting to see how many people were actually using it as an opportunity to save money, on rent or not pay rent, and, use it as an excuse. But so it's just an interesting social dynamic is all I'm saying, really.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people that refused to just pay and they're just blaming it on the pandemic, and rightfully so. I mean, it's a tragedy, like Tarek was saying. But, I was sort of in the mindset, if I can pay, I'm going to pay. And if I need to get out, I'm going to still pay and then get out too. But I'm going to get a good deal getting out, and then I'm going to come back, when I feel comfortable. So there's a lot of that going on right now.
Well, I would just add, though, that Nashville's actually performed pretty well as it relates to collections. So we're still in the mid-90s on collections, and it breaks out based on the type of asset. But overall, we've done very well relative to a lot of our other markets from a collection perspective.
Are you seeing Class B being more successful right now, or Class A?
Yeah, Class B is doing better. The Class A is being affected by supply, and just that higher end is struggling a bit more. But from a capital markets perspective, which I know we probably don't have time to get to, you're seeing strength from all product types from investor interest coming into the market, and we're going to break records on price per unit numbers, even in the face of the tax increase and COVID. So the amount of interest from outside investment in this market has only grown, helped not just by low interest rate environment, but also just by some of the things we talked about, these structural changes of people moving out of gateway markets, looking for investments in these growth markets.
Yeah, on a kind of a national basis, what we're seeing is just developers and individuals that were heavy into the leisure market, the hotel side. And as that got really decimated during this pandemic, there was a quick flight to try and transition all of that development and capital investment,
Yes.
Quickly to multifamily as the most closest, application. So, and you've seen that, Evan. You see that kind of competition rising coming from that segment.
Yes, to a small degree. I mean, where we are right now positioned, geographically, Franklin had a lot of hotel activity, and that has slowed. We have entitled a hotel parcel, and my 3 to 4 calls a month has probably dipped to, 1 call, maybe no calls. Now there was a development, reasonably close to us that was very heavy on hotels, and they're trying to figure out how they recast right now. It was hotels, it was entertainment, it was not unlike what was done up on 31 in Brentwood, and they are trying to recast what they're putting together now. I don't know if it's going to be multifamily, but where it is in the market, it certainly can't be single family. It could be office, but yeah, we have seen some of that certainly.
Yeah, certainly.
Evan, I've got a buyer for you. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I want to make sure we do have a question that came in. I think it's probably good to try and address that. So I'll just toss it up to the panel, but it comes in from Mark, and it says, do you see an increase in workforce housing developments in the suburbs for renters with solid incomes, such as healthcare workers, teachers, police officers, renters who can't afford all the amenities and all that Class A housing? Anybody want to kind of address that or talk to that specifically for Mark?
I can talk about it. In Davidson and Williamson, we haven't seen the attitude and the focus on it either as a required aspect of a new community. I have seen it particularly in Florida. Florida introduced some statewide legislation to look at workforce housing, and different municipalities have interpreted it and implemented it differently, and how you work within that. There's a couple different ways you can work within that. One, you can obviously provide it as part of your product. Certain number of units, some of them attached to just the MSA income levels. Some of them allow you to actually implement your professional skills in finding land, construction, development, to maybe using some of the existing stock and repurposing or redeveloping it for affordable housing. But I'm not going to say it has been implemented more differentially on a state-by-state basis.
From a private investment perspective, we're seeing it more out of looking to fill a niche. So you're seeing developers go into maybe some gray collar markets where the rents on the surface in that submarket won't support new construction, but they're building it. And while it's not, in quotes, affordable, it is far more cost effective for a renter to live there than in other markets. And they under amenitize, again, I'm using these words in air quotes, but they just build it to a lower spec to keep costs down a bit. And as Evan knows, I mean, the finishes can only move the needle so much, right?
Right.
But it does help. And when you're buying land that's less expensive in maybe these first ring suburbs that are gray collar and building, Donaldson's a great example of that, where the private markets just found that that opportunity in going and building a product at a bit of a lower spec from the Class A luxury stuff just down the road.
Yeah, and real quick, that is what I'm seeing as well. I've got a project in Madison, and I'm also looking into the Nashville General Hospital relocation. Just that hospital relocation actually has that vibe built into it. So they're going to require some kind of workforce housing wherever they go, and we don't know where they're going to go, but that's going to be a component of it required. And then even with the entitlements granted, for redoing the Madison Square Shopping Center, there was a affordable housing or workforce housing component. So absolutely required. So I'm seeing the same thing in some of these tertiary communities.
Yeah, we'll take one more question here. We've seen that we had about just a few minutes, and so we'll try and address Vince. Vince asked to the panel, has single family for rent far hit Nashville? A single family for rent so far hit Nashville? Yeah, what's driving this new trend, the single family for rent?
I mean, I can take that. I actually just got a big, a lot of input from one of my friends, and it basically, they are super strong on Nashville, the surrounding communities, mainly the suburbs. So they're definitely going into like places like Mount Juliet. They're looking eventually at Thompson Station. Franklin's already overbuilt. There's scarcity there. They're looking at communities like Bellevue. They are definitely not going to stop until they get at least 3 or 4 large communities in 15 acres to 20 acres plus. So I mean, they're so bullish on this thing. So I mean, I feel very strong about the whole concept of it. It makes sense. And they have a lot of institutional investment that's coming in to the city to build that kind of a community. Yeah. So, and they've already got one underway, and that's just one company, and there are others. So,
on a national basis, where we're seeing the primary drivers, Vince, that we're seeing is this next generation. This generation that's kind of been held up in the metro cities. This COVID was the impetus to say, all right, let's maybe de-densify, right? And so they're going to go out to those suburbs and start their families. but the tenure is not the same at workforces, right? They're more transient, they're more comfortable making an adjustment or moving,
Yes.
right? So how do you get that, that quarter acre of land, some grass for Fido, somewhere to walk to, and then be able to pick up and move pretty easily, or easier, right? I think that's the primary driver. At least that's what we're hearing.
He real quick. He said that they're actually getting rents that are like on par or higher than a mortgage payment for a home in the area. And that's how important it is for the transient person to have that freedom to move without being tied down. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch, and certainly you're describing it's coming aggressively into Nashville, and it is growing. So let's we got about 5 minutes. Thank you, gentlemen. I always try and be the not the smartest man in the room, and I certainly have done that. So thank you guys for your education today. I will leave one last question and kind of give you guys a chance to just kind of close out your thoughts on Nashville and the multifamily market, and then Todd will be ready to toss it back to you. As you kind of exit, where do you see your business in the next 12 months, right? So you got your crystal ball out, you're looking out. What do you see significantly in your business in the next 12 months? Better, worse, status quo, and then maybe a little why. Let's kind of go the inverse way that we did the introduction. So I think, Evan, we'll start with you.
So we in our pipeline, I think we have a little bit of a bottleneck at the back end, and that's for various reasons. We started the site work on a couple different things, watched the market, watched a couple other aspects of the market, and I can't believe I didn't discuss this earlier, but the price of lumber as it went through the roof and is starting to come back to earth here a little bit has affected how we execute and when we go vertical. But we just talked today about the 4 projects we have currently under construction. We have another 3 already slated to follow that. And we are a company that, traditionally has rolled out 600 units or so a year. Now we're talking about rolling out double that to the market. And we don't see, assuming post-COVID and assuming what we think is going to happen post-COVID, we don't see any problem bringing those to market.
Awesome. So big things for
yes.
Yeah, that's great. Let's the next Andrew, how about you kind of sign in? Where do you see Westgate? Where do you see yourself in the next year or so?
Well, yeah, Westgate. It's been a lot of fun to work with my father, which I never expected to ever have to do. But he's awesome, and we're just trying to grow the next generation of agents, and expand our service offerings and partner with different individuals that can help expand that. So Westgate is actually growing significantly as far as a boutique company. I mean, we're not like a Newmark, obviously, and we don't have any intention of ever becoming one. But we're definitely happy with our ability to be boutique and grow our service offerings and really hyper focus on certain markets and develop some of those political connections, tertiary, service connections, architects, land planners, you name it. So and we're very, very blessed to be in this particular area right now. So that is driving the growth. That's driving our agent growth and all kinds of opportunities. So it's just a blessing, really, to be in Nashville.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Andrew. And Tarek, how do you see Newmark, right, going on into the next year in Nashville area?
So as I said before, Vince Loeffler and I are we have an analyst, George Schubert, that comprises the Newmark office in Nashville. And so we're actively looking to grow that office across business lines, including multifamily. And then the firm is also looking to grow other business lines within the real estate services. So I expect we'll be doing a lot of hiring and growing in 21. And we're very optimistic. All the reasons that we've discussed over the past hour, I think, leads you to that. But we see things getting better for us as a firm next year.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. And thank you again, the three gentlemen. Appreciate that. And the contacts and information to get in touch with you guys personally have been kind of deployed here throughout the panel. And I'm sure Todd will help get that out after the program. You know, it's been a blessing to just see the optimism and the power. We've talked about when the fever breaks at BCI, what's going to happen, and not to trivialize or minimize the effect that COVID's had on each one of us, and a deeper, you know, but it's good to be thinking about and talking about the positive aspects and growth, and kind of getting back to it and building out this market. So for all of those, I appreciate your time, and thanks for the attendees. Hopefully you found a nugget or two. I'm sure you did. And Todd, I'll kind of hand it off back to you right on time, 11 o'clock.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
You're the man.
You guys got this timing thing down.
Good job, Kyle.
Good work. Well, let's keep the ball rolling. If you're on the next panel, go ahead and activate your camera. I'm going to do another screen share here. I want to thank these folks again while the next panel comes on. Again, sponsors make this all possible. Without this, we couldn't get all of these great things done. One more thing to show you here. Sorry. I think when you are of a certain age, Zoom gets more difficult. Not going to say what age that is.
It's way older than us.
Right, here we go. Hold, please. 3, 2, 1. This is our YouTube channel. So this is where you'll find a replay of this event. I'm a little bit behind on getting them all uploaded. They take time. They kind of have to get done overnight. So I'm a little behind. And I'm in Florida right now, so everything takes longer. But this is where you'll find this event. You can find also all kinds of other events. So in here, you see this is our event section. I'm kind of circling it with my mouse right now. Events from Minnesota, from Illinois, from across the Midwest. Click in here and you can watch an event on just about any topic: industrial, office, retail. Got a great panel coming out next week on retail with some national retail leaders. Then we have my show, Power 30, which is a news and information show. It's got a deep dive interview with one sort of super person, usually good and interesting. And at the bottom, you'll see events and shorts. So, 2 to 3 minute clips, maybe something somebody says on here will end up in this news, events, and shorts section. So that's us. If you do go there, make sure you click on subscribe, because also people of a certain age don't ever click on subscribe, and it really kind of hurts my status on YouTube. So I appreciate you remembering to do that. We've got another panel to wrap us up today. Y'all can go a little bit past the hour if you like, because I know we've got a lot of good panelists here. Just make sure we've got Rhonda's on. You're the moderator. Are you ready to roll?
I'm ready to roll.
Well, here we go. The controls are all yours. I'll be here if you need anything. Just holler, say, hey, Todd, I need whatever.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us for the commercial side of the update for the Nashville area. Just to introduce everybody on the panel, we've got David McGarren with Cushman & Wakefield, who's going to talk to us about industrial. David Baker with Baker Story McDonald Properties, who's going to share his insights on retail. Sharon Greaves with Momentum Commercial Real Estate Services, who will be sharing her knowledge on medical office. Thomas McDaniel with Bull Development, who's going to talk to us about the office market, and Patrick Poole with Al Nair, who's going to talk to us from the developer's perspective. So thank you all for being on the panel today, and let's go ahead and just get started. David, why don't you, McGarren, why don't you kick us off with industrial and just kind of share with us what 2020 has meant to you and industrial, and kind of where we are.
Sure. 2020 has been one of our best years ever, interestingly enough, through this whole COVID period. And I think that you would point to the online shopping and e-commerce as the main driver for that. We've seen, not our best year of absorption, but through Q3, we're about 4.6 million square feet. We'll probably add another million plus in the fourth quarter. So it's going to be a really good year for industrial Nashville. Construction continues to boom. What we're seeing in terms of activity has been, the main driver has been what we call shallow bay buildings, that range in size from 150 to 250,000 square feet. And those buildings are typically built for tenants that range in size from 25 or 30 up to about 150 or 250,000 square feet. But those are those smaller users that are, the companies that are servicing e-commerce, but also servicing all the growth in Nashville, whether it's contractor services, suppliers, things of that nature. And of course, there's still big box activity, most of which is being built out in the east submarket now. That's east on I-40 out to I-840. So we've got buildings that range in size under construction from 225,000 square feet up to 600,000 square feet. And those are, a couple of those 600s are expandable to as large as a million two. So, it's been a really great year, and you kind of, with as much pain as everybody's suffered through COVID this year, it's almost, you feel guilty saying we've had this great year, but industrial just doesn't appear to be slowing down. And I think for all of those reasons, we're going to see that continue going into next year. I guess, and the one other thing I would mention in terms of the really significant growth would be Amazon and what Amazon's activity has been in Nashville. We did some calculations there. They will be occupying their 3.5 million square foot multi-story building in Mount Juliet probably in June. And when that building's done, if you count, it's multi-story, so it's not footprint, it's, all stories at 3.5 million feet, but they'll have a presence in Nashville of almost 9 million square feet. So clearly an important market for Amazon.
So do you see any end in sight as far as demand for the industrial space, or?
Say that again.
So do you see any end in sight as far as demand for the industrial space?
I didn't hear which demand. I'm sorry, it's not coming on the computer.
Just the demand for industrial space. Do you see any end in sight for that, or do you?
End in sight? No, I really don't. I mean, I see it continuing to grow. E-commerce is as busy as it's been so far, since its real inception. It's not slowing down, and I think it's got, a lot more continued upside. And Nashville, because of its location, well, two things. One, Nashville, because of its population growth, has fueled a lot of that, and I don't see that slowing down. And Nashville, because of its location, sort of, we call it kind of the gateway to the Southeast. You've got, it sets Nashville up as a really strong logistics point. And with we always say 3 major interstates, I-840 is, 840 is now an interstate also. So, but the 3 interstates that trisect Nashville go to to Mobile, so to the coast on I-65, to Indianapolis to the north, I-24 to Chattanooga, and you pick up 75 to Atlanta, and it goes up to I-24 goes to St. Louis, and of course I-40 goes coast to coast. And that puts Nashville in a really good place from a transportation standpoint.
So what, if you are a developer right now looking for industrial places to build industrial and develop industrial, what areas in Middle Tennessee would you be looking toward to do those developments at?
Well, I'll tell you what developers are telling us, and then I'll finish that by saying that's a huge problem for us, is finding available land. Developers and owners that are looking to buy or invest, takeout developers want infill locations, and so that would speak to the shallow bay buildings that I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation. The challenge is finding available land that doesn't have huge topography issues, that's entitled and zoned properly. We're starting to see more and more of our municipalities, Nashville specific, but our surrounding areas like Murfreesboro and Smyrna, Mount Juliet to a certain degree, that are just not that thrilled about industrial warehouse going forward. Not to say that they won't rezone, but their preference is higher paying jobs. So manufacturing is acceptable, not necessarily smokestack manufacturing, but higher end assembly or manufacturing, where those are high paying jobs and brings tax dollars into the community. I think it's a little short-sighted. I think there's still room for warehouse industrial development in those communities, but you got to find the right location. But that's going to be a problem going forward. Lebanon is still very receptive. And so to answer your question, it's probably going to be more to the east, to out, I-840, maybe further out I-40. We'll see. But that's been a big challenge. And we've had droves of developers coming to Nashville asking for, brokers to find a piece of land, find them something they can build on. And that's not slowing down one bit.
So if the infill locations are like the premium locations that everybody wants to develop in, are the tenants willing to pay a premium to be closer to those infill locations, the downtown area, the airport? Are you seeing the rise in rates?
Yeah, they have been willing to pay a premium. We're seeing rents. I guess Airport Logistics Park ALP is a really good example of that. It's located near the airport. Holiday Properties developed it, and they're on phase 3 of that park right now. But we actually sold that park, I guess late second quarter of this year, and it was hugely successful. The tenant sizes range from about 6,000-7,000 square feet up to about 30,000 square feet. What we call that ICBD Elm Hill Pike Airport area has been 95% leased for 15 years, 20 years. So there's just no space for tenants to expand. So if they want to continue to service that area, core Nashville and out, they need to be in that particular area. And that's why ALP was so successful. Since that time, State Street is developing out there. They've got a development called Hamilton Creek, and Strategic Capital's got 3 buildings that are a little bigger out there along Couchville Pike near the airport. So, now that area has been discovered, I don't know how much more land is going to be available out there to be either rezoned or built. There may be some, but it's, that area is going to start to lock that down too, as well. But those rents are, they can be as much as $2 to $3 a foot higher than in Laverne or Smyrna or even out on the I-40, 840 area. And they're willing to pay that. I think the other piece, since we've been in COVID for almost a year, and traffic hadn't been that bad, people have kind of forgotten about what we were going through from a traffic standpoint, up into the beginning of COVID. But, our interstates coming in from Wilson County, Rutherford County, Sumner, Robertson, it was gridlock every morning and gridlock every afternoon. And it was the topic of conversation, with 80 to 100 people a day moving to Nashville. And what are we going to do with all these cars? And again, it's kind of gone away. There's other more important topics to talk about right now. But when these tenants were looking to locate, they're looking at speed of service and delivery. And if you were to locate in Laverne, as an example, and be servicing an inner city, core location, it's tough at 8 o'clock in the morning to get from Laverne to downtown Nashville.
Right.
So
right. I live in Rutherford County, so that's real.
There you go.
So, well, thank you, David. And so we're talking about with industrial, and we talk about Amazon, and we talk about e-commerce. So, David Baker, can you just share with us kind of what COVID has meant to the retail market in Nashville, and kind of what this year's summed up for us?
Well, I think before 2020 started, the retail industry was starting to experience the impact of Amazon and other e-commerce impacts onto the industry. When 2020 and in March 15th, when all this started, it exacerbated the issue that the retailers were having. Those that were set up for retail commerce, actually, other than March, April, May, and June, when pretty much everybody had to shut down. You remember, and not necessarily in Nashville as much, but a lot of the U.S. malls had to close and be closed for an extended period of time. They're now closed in the West Coast again, and we're experiencing a lot of that. But an interesting stat is that 88% of those sales that were done on Black Friday weekend were done with retailers that had an online presence. So the retailers that were set up to do this, Lululemon's a prime example of that. Their comp sales came out this morning. Their comp sales were down in the store 17%, but their overall comp sales were up, and I'm guessing, I don't remember what it said exactly, 30%, something like that. So, those that are set up to do this are actually, the retailers themselves are doing pretty well. What we're seeing the impact is the landlords, because if you have a 17% drop in sales, that means in a store, that means the rent levels have to go down to accommodate for that negative impact to the stores. And so what we experienced in the first 3 months of the COVID was a request for rent relief. Some retailers just sent out arbitrary emails and just saying, we're not paying rent. We got one on a Barnes and Noble deal that we own, and it said it was we're not paying rent. Stop. That was it. There was no call us in 90 days, whatever. They just stopped paying rent. And some of the lenders were very open to discussions of forbearance on 90 days worth of interest and or principal payments, and the other CMBS lenders weren't able to do that. So it just created a lot of confusion in the industry. And so for the first 90 days of COVID, we mainly spent time with retailers understanding which way was up. I mean, they were calling, wanting rent relief. They wanted to know what the next steps were. We didn't know if the world was coming to an end or whether it was going. And now we're seeing those that were prepared, those that were looking for opportunities, expanding. TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Lulu, Athleta, Old Navy, Bell's Outlet, Burke's Outlet, Sprouts, Publix, Kroger, Aldi. You can just go down the list of those that are taking advantage of the situation and going, our business is great. I don't know what you're talking about. Bring it on. So it's kind of a mixed bag, Rhonda.
I would agree with that. That's kind of what we've seen with the projects that we have as well. So as the landlords have had to kind of traverse the waters of the tenants who just said, we're just not going to pay, or the tenants who said, here's the keys, we just can't make it work anymore. What are you seeing as some of the alternative uses for some of these boxes that are coming back online? As opposed to there just aren't that many large retailers that are expanding, especially like in Murfreesboro, you're only going to have one, probably TJ Maxx, but there are other boxes that are available. So what do you see as alternative uses for those? Well,
and one of the things that I think we all acknowledged in the last couple of years in the retail industry, that you started to see a marked slowdown of development from 2010, 11, 12 through 18, 19. You had a very robust expansion of not only big box centers, but lifestyle centers and entertainment centers. And, you had movie theaters, you had so many retailers that were expanding, that you look at what we saw in the core of downtown Nashville with the development of Fifth and Broad and the AEG Live project on the old Lifeway campus. And, you had a lot of things that were coming, and obviously AEG Live is on hold, and the Broad, I assume, is going to open up here when they get ready. But we all knew that most of the U.S. was over retailed, not necessarily in Nashville, because our zoning is such, our topography is such, that it's hard for Nashville to get over retail, just simply because we don't have the capacity of just taking Hillsborough Road from downtown to Franklin and making it retail solid the entire distance. So, and we never have. And so that's always kept our retail rents strong. It's always kept our market strong. But to answer your question on existing retails, I handle Sears surplus in 3 states, and you look at the boxes that are being turned, and none of them are going retail. We're seeing a lot of demand for self-storage. We sold one in North Chattanooga to a group that's going to do a charter school. I was with one yesterday in Mississippi on Wednesday that's going to do light manufacturing in there. They're actually a use that sells e-commerce to the design trade, and so we're seeing a lot of the retail being absorbed. And if you look at buying a 150,000 square foot retail building for $3 million, you know, McGarren can't build that building for $3 million for 120,000 square feet. You just can't do that. And so you're seeing a lot of good opportunities. There are lots of issues with that, from zoning to REAs with other co-tenants and things like that. But I'm going to guess that a lot of these retail boxes are going to be absorbed in other different uses.
And just as far as to put this a little bit in perspective from the retail side, how does the shopping center industry compare what we're going through now with 2008, 2009?
What we're not seeing is the bloodbath of retail owners throwing in the towel and saying we can't operate the center anymore. This time around, most retailers are paying rent, albeit maybe a little bit reduced still at this point, particularly some of the entertainment, some of the restaurant, and some of the other folks. But most in our portfolio and most retailers that are paying rent, most people are in pretty good shape at this point. There's a group that comes out and puts out a survey every month of, you know, which groups are still not paying rent. And other than pretty heavy restaurant, pretty heavy entertainment, most of those are in good shape. Also, you look at the location, the underlying real estate location of the retail project, and if those are well positioned before COVID, they're going to be fine after COVID. We're seeing that most lenders are being agreeable to work with you if they sense that there's a shortfall, or that the properties aren't so over levered as they were back in the late 2000s. So, you know, the over leverage is not an issue at this point, and if most retailers are paying rent, the landlords are able to keep this up. The REITs may not be getting the returns to their investors as they were hoping. Now, that's not to say that the CBLs and the Simons and the Taubmans of the world that have the malls, you know, I suspect that's the biggest weakness in the industry right now is the mall industry. If you look, the CAM charges alone in some of the malls at Green Hills Mall, like the CAM charges, CAM taxes and insurance are higher there than what a normal rent would be if you went out on the main street. And so you'll probably see a lot of, and Gap is just not paying rent. I mean, Gap is just saying, you know, the heck with you, we're not paying rent. And you know, so there's a lot of the mall owners and people like that. And so it's a mixed bag of where all this is going to end up. But I don't think it's going to be the bloodbath that we saw back in 2008 and 2009, nor do I see the opportunities for investors coming in and going, gosh, I can sweep up and buy a property in Bellevue and pay a 20 cap for it. You know, that's not going to happen.
Okay. Which retailers kind of brings us full circle in 2021? Which retailers do you think will survive and quite frankly thrive the COVID pandemic?
So we're seeing all of the grocery stores do exceptionally well. We're seeing those guys expanding. Who would have ever thought that you would have seen a Publix pay $10 million for 1.7 acres on 8th Avenue and do a 2-level garage parking with their store on the top level with no surface parking whatsoever for their customers. That shows the demand for the retail. Trader Joe's is on an expansion plan. Sprouts is on an expansion plan. Aldi's on an expansion plan. Liquor stores are doing exceptionally well. People are buying wine and going home and going to the store and buying food, or getting takeout and going home. Just to say the opposite, the restaurant business is dying because they're unable to support operating at 50% capacity, or in LA or New York, where they spent all this money on trying to expand their outdoor dining opportunities, to find out they've spent, you know, make it up $100,000 to create outdoor dining to have the government shut them down totally again. So we're seeing those guys really kind of mixed bag of how that does. And Not necessarily does that impact us in Nashville as much as it is if it's a national chain, make it up a Palm restaurant or you know, Longhorn or some of those guys, that not necessarily affect us in Nashville because the national chain is experiencing a downturn, that it drags down the entire stores there. Other guys are doing well. The off-price clothing guys, Ross, TJ, Burke's Outlet, Burlington. The small guys, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, Lululemon, pet stores. Pet stores are doing exceptionally well right now. People are adopting pets, and they need to feed them. And you don't scrimp on pet food for your dogs. At least I don't. So we're seeing those guys do really well. The guys that are suffering, the entertainment industry, the movie theaters, the Dave and Buster's, the dry cleaners, GNC. You know, they're definitely not seeing things now. And I will throw this out before I forget. This Christmas, y'all, buy local. Don't buy Amazon. No offense to Amazon, they're a great client, and we love them. But the local retailers need the help right now. And so if you can spend your money locally, even if it's online, that would help us tremendously.
Perfect. Thank you, David. So now we'll shift from kind of the industrial and the retail areas over to the office area and talk to Sharon Greaves about medical office. So Sharon, what has 2020 meant to medical office, and what has COVID done for the medical office?
Well, actually, the good news for, the medical office is they're somewhat resilient to a lot of the crises. People are still going to go to the doctor. People still have to go to the doctor. And what we saw is most of the tenants I manage 5 medical office buildings, and we only had most of those that couldn't operate were dentists and chiropractors, eye doctors. And we, ironically, only the big corporate tenants asked for rent relief or rent reduction or that sort of thing. The small independent medical offices didn't ask. They got a lot of their, payroll covered and that sort of thing. So we were, you're kind of lucky in the medical because they're just, it's cyclical. They're just resistant to a lot of that. What we saw a lot of the tenants asking if they could put chairs in the hallway or if we could put benches outside to keep those that distance. Of course, we can't put chairs in the hallways. We can't have kids running up and down. We did accommodate some benches outside. Some of our tenants actually had a call system, just like you do at Target, where you had an appointment and you called in and said, I'm out in the parking lot, and they just sit in their car until they call in. But as far as rent and the rent rolls stayed the same, stayed strong, and everyone paid as usual.
Very good. So one of the things that we know just by watching the news and the local publications that come out, that we see that there's a lot of investors that are coming to Tennessee. So what's your thoughts on why they are coming to Tennessee, for one, to buy medical office buildings in the area?
Obviously, Nashville is one of the top areas for medical. If I get my numbers right, I think 10 of the 100 largest companies in Nashville, I think 5 of them are medical. I think HCA, LifePoint, Envision. So obviously, because of the industry, investors are coming to Nashville. And again, investors love MOBs because just what I talked about. The occupancy rates don't change. Rent rolls usually don't change. Medical offices put so much money into tenant improvement that usually when they're in, 80% stay. So, you have that constant revenue stream. And then basically, multi-tenant office space, I think Thomas can vouch for this, are more appealing than one-off. And so when you have a strong rent roll, your MOBs, you know, are gonna sell. And the cap rates are very low right now. And even with cap rates in the 5, sub-6, most of them are trading at sub-6. I'm working with an investment group that is closing today on 8 MOBs in Tennessee. I mean, it's crazy. I've got 1 medical office building in Clarksville under contract, and 2 of my buildings are being closed on today that I manage. So we haven't slowed down at all. It's been absolutely kind of like what David said. I haven't seen, I mean, this has been my best year.
That's great. So if the rates are still high, the demand is still high for medical office. So what does the future look like for the healthcare, and what should doctors be looking for? How is it going to change as far as what doctors wanted in their office, their medical office spaces before versus going forward and what they're looking for? So kind of what's the future hold, do you think?
Well, doctors are still looking for those medical office buildings that are close to hospitals and ambulatory services. As far as a physical building, they're looking a lot of a parking ratio now because of the number of turn for the patients. They're looking at a minimum 5 per 1,000, and they'd really like more on the parking. One thing that we're seeing, there's 2 things that we're seeing. One, we're seeing that in these I guess when you're looking at retail and office and these mixed use, the medical component is actually coming into play. That work walk is if you can go and shop and then go to your doctor and then go eat and that sort of thing, we're seeing a rise on that. A lot of developers in medical are actually looking for more land, and they're doing that retail component out front, and they're doing a hotel in the back, and they're doing an office. Agilitas, who I work close with, they just took down 62 acres right next to Amazon on Golden Bear Parkway. And they did that, one, because Wilson County is just growing leaps and bounds. And 2, that whole stretch there, while, you know, Dave mentioned it, it's industrial. But when you talk to the tenants like Amazon, what they want close to them is they want, you know, to be able to take their pets. They want hotels, they want retail. And then, you know, when you ask them, they said, yeah, we'd love to be able to drop our kids, you know, to the pediatrician and maybe at lunch go see our dentist and that sort of thing. So we're seeing a change there where medical office buildings are now being put into the mix of, you know, this tenant mix development. The other thing that I found interesting in doing some research, and even myself has used it, is Walgreens are now becoming, they're working, I forget it's like Boots Alliance is their medical retail. If you go into their clinics, and I think they just merged with this Village MD, they're going to expand if they can, expand their Walgreens stores to include clinics. Vanderbilt's putting clinics in Kroger stores and that sort of thing. What you're going to see is a lot more people going to these retail clinics and getting your shots, you know, the flu shots, and all of those immunizations. And you're actually going to see a lot more on the retail side than you are, than, you know, you would think would happen.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It sounds like so far the biggest challenge has been the retail side and just trying to figure out the e-commerce versus the physical store presence and how do we help each other survive. So let's roll from medical office over into office. And Thomas, if you can share with us what 2020 and the impact of COVID has been on the office market.
Well, it has been a ton of fun. Not quite as rewarding as industrial, as Dave was mentioned, and you know, we have certainly been busy. We're in the 2 steps forward, 2 steps back mentality, I think. It's been more of a soap opera that started in March, and you know, perhaps even more for Boyle than other landlords. You know, we've had a lot to deal with because most of our office is in a mixed use setting, and so a lot of the mixed use appeal has had its own travails, and our mixed use retail is more focused on retail and restaurant, service retail and restaurant. So you know, whereas David was speaking to a lot of the larger groups and groceries and national folks that are doing well, a lot of our amenity retailers are more local and trying to serve folks that are in the projects that have not been occupying the projects. So so this year's been interesting. You know, we started March with as healthy a market as we could hope for. We have new buildings that are in development that are always an interesting microcosm to look at. And, you know, we have one in Cool Springs, for example, that in March, the building had just been completed, probably 20% leased. And we had first choice proposals working that would have filled up the building and then some. And COVID hit and we lost probably 2/3 of those deals. Fortunately, we were able to finish 1/3 of them to take that particular building to 36% leased. But had we had 90 more days, that building would have been totally filled. And, you know, fortunately, we finished out a few of those, got to 36%, and then just kind of sat there. The summer, we were frozen from a new leasing interest standpoint. We had a lot of retrenchment to deal with in terms of existing tenant calls and, you know, everything the other panelists have mentioned. But the summer was completely dead from a new interest standpoint. Once we got to August, the phone started ringing a little bit. You know, coincidentally, that may have coincided with schools restarting, and that's starting to nudge people back out into thinking about working again. So phone started ringing a little bit in August. Then in September, we started getting some tours again. Then October, November, those tours started turning into proposals. And now we have some leases working. So from a total demand standpoint right now, we're doing decent. And I would take decent. You know, it's not quite what it was pre-COVID. But it's pretty decent demand right now. That said, the market is not, you know, overall healthy because we have an outflow of tenants who are thinking they may need less space or subleasing space. And so there's a negative that's offsetting the positive right now. But things are certainly improving. I think a foundation has been established that we will climb back from here.
So some of the people that are, I guess, with the existing tenants, are you seeing the work from home aspect really? How do you think that work from home experience is going to affect office space in Nashville, you know, short term and long term? I know some of that will have to do with parents having to educate their children at home whenever they're learning virtually. But just overall, kind of both short term and long term, where do you see that? What the impact?
Yeah, I hope the parental drag does not last much longer. We need to get our kids back in school for the economy, number one, but for the kids even more so. As a father of 4, between the ages of 6 and 13, our kids need to be in school. you know, in terms of work from home, that is the $25,000 question. You know, there are offsetting forces, certainly at a headline level. There are a lot of companies, particularly large corporate national groups, that are looking to say, you know, office space is a cost, and I'm not seeing any benefit from that right now if we have all our people working from home. I don't know that, you know, what to me seems like an easy cost to save. I could be biased, but I don't know that that's going to seem quite as easy. We roll forward the calendar a couple of years, but nevertheless, there is a negative force right now of some of these companies looking to say, do we need to bring people back to work? Offsetting that, however, you know, potentially there may be some spacing out of people or some undensifying of office layouts, potentially people going back to more hard wall oriented layouts as opposed to just the wide open that we had been seeing as the recent trend. So any of those versions would remove some densification and force tenants to spread out and take more space. So that would be a slight positive. Another positive that's unique to where we all reside is that I think Nashville is a net beneficiary of all of the long-term economic trends that we had already been seeing, and now compounded by tenants moving out of certain large cities and into cities like Nashville and Austin and Raleigh and Denver. So that's another plus. So we've got all these offsetting forces. You know, when I talk to, and so we'll see how all those net out. When I talk to a tenant right now that's thinking they may be able to save square footage by sending a big chunk of their people home or keeping them home, the biggest question I ask that tenant is, you know, they got people working and everybody loves more flexibility and everybody loves the idea of, you know, staying home and working in casual attire on Friday or doing whatever. But are you gonna take away that person's desk is the big question to those users who may think of this as an idea, but translating it to reality, you know, we're all in, a lot of people forget the reason they chose their Class A office with great amenities and everything else is because we're in a competitive environment to hire people, quality employees. And in order for you to accrue savings from this work from home theory, you have to be willing to go to a hoteling situation where anybody who you are sending home part-time, full-time, when they do come into the office, they don't have a dedicated desk anymore and they have to share a desk. And their pictures have to go into a locker and their files have to get packed up at the end of the day and put in a locker and then pulled back out to go to work the next time they come into work. And, you know, other issues as well in terms of collaboration and can you grow a business when everyone is disparate? There are many questions, but the biggest one a lot of people don't think about is to save square footage. That means you've got to consolidate desks and have people that don't have a dedicated workspace. And that's where the rubber is going to meet the road to me in terms of a lot of these people. Because if you've got a, you know, qualified, highly demanded 40-year-old employee, managerial employee, let's just take as an example, you're going to tell that person you've competed to hire and have to give a good raise to keep. Are you going to tell them you won't spend a little more money to allocate 20 more office square feet to them having a dedicated desk? You know, I don't know how long that's going to last. So we'll see.
Okay, so when we talk about the companies and kind of what it looks like for them from the work from home perspective versus the physical offices, how have the amenities or the demand for what amenities are important now that maybe were more important pre-COVID that aren't so important post-COVID? You know, how has that moved around, and have you seen much change in what the companies are looking for from the offices?
Yeah, you know, I think there are some things that are are being masked right now because we are in the middle of this situation that will change. Kind of like Dave was mentioning about traffic. People have forgotten about traffic because nobody's on the roads. But as soon as people are, that's going to be real important again. To me, the biggest thing is I think there's going to be a higher demand for quality office space. If there is a relative beneficiary and then, a relatively more impacted group, I think the commodity office space could suffer more, whether it's Class B or whether it is kind of customer service oriented, which is more susceptible to the work from home capability. I think those will be more impacted. And I think for those groups that do continue to want and need office spaces, as we are trying to convince employees to be willing to come back to the office that have been enjoying the comforts of working from home for whatever it'll be, a year. That's going to be a tough decision and a tough sell. And in doing so, I think companies will focus more and more on saying, okay, for the office that we do have, it's going to be great. And so what does that mean? That means, more than anything, I think it means amenitized office spaces, perhaps mixed use environments. I'm a little biased because that's a big focus of Boyle's. And so I'll admit that, but I think having quality work life environment is going to be just as important as having kind of quality of life at home. And so for people to be able to come to work and be in a walkable environment where you can go to amenities, where you have open space and you're not stuck inside all day and you can answer emails out, in the pocket park. I think that's going to become more and more important as we try to lure people back to the office.
Gotcha. Okay. So now we've talked about all the different sectors. So we will move to Patrick and have Patrick tell us how much fun the developers have been having in 2020 with COVID and kind of what the effect it has played on the real estate development world in the Nashville market so far.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So obviously COVID's affected the market as a whole, as everyone on this panel and the prior panel has discussed. But from a developer standpoint, it's created obviously some challenges and some possible opportunities. Most of our developments, we do go through an entitlement process. So throughout the course of this year, it's created several challenges, from whether it be delays in public hearings or formats with various city municipalities have changed to online or what meetings used to be in person. So there's been a little change in the entitlement process. We have seen a little bit of opportunities that have been created. I think as COVID first hit the Nashville market, in particular, some developers that may have been out of town or had been pretty aggressive on some of their land sites ended up dropping a few deals that did create some opportunities, maybe not as many as we had hoped. So a few opportunities have presented themselves on the land side, but the biggest change for us has really been on the construction side. We've had a lot of volatility in the market for the materials. Lumber in the multifamily sector has really created a large cause for concern. And in the industrial sector, where Ahlheit has been pretty aggressive here locally, we're starting to see some steel prices that have changed, and obviously that's going to affect the end price of the end completion and have ripple effects into the pricing of our end user. So construction will continue to be a big cause for concern. Luckily, we haven't seen too much disruption in the labor market due to COVID, but that's always a concern in a hot market such as Nashville. And then, developers are only as good as their capital. So financing has also been something that has been a little bit of a roller coaster. COVID's created softening of the market in the debt side, but on the flip side, we've seen a much more demand, especially in certain asset classes, on the equity side. So it's been a wild ride this year due to COVID. And I'm sure that's going to continue a little bit into next year.
So as far as the looking forward on the development side, what asset classes do you see the most opportunity for new development for the Nashville area?
I will somewhat piggyback on the last panel and what David McGarren was mentioning earlier. Al and I's main focus, at least for 2021 and likely 2022, is in the industrial and the multifamily sector. From a macro perspective, those are two of the hottest markets as well, and you're seeing that play out here locally. Just like David had mentioned in the industrial space, again, on a macro level, you're seeing e-commerce have the biggest effect. There's a lot of projections that e-commerce is going to grow upwards of 20% next year, and every dollar amount that e-commerce grows requires more and more distribution space. So locally, you're seeing a big boom in industrial demand. There's also in some of our other Al-Nair markets, you may see some more manufacturing increasing due to what we call reshoring and bringing manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. We don't see as much of that here locally as we do the distribution boom. But Nashville's combined population growth, favorable business climate in the state and in most of our local municipalities. David had mentioned the interstate access is a huge effect, and in various counties around Middle Tennessee, we have tremendous access to multiple interstate systems, which really allow us to compete with other southeastern states to get end users here for distribution and other logistical users. And then same goes for multifamily. Again, the last panel did a great job of going into the details on the multifamily side, but we see a huge continued growth in the multifamily sector. So we are not only looking at urban product, but as we continue to see suburban sprawl into some of these areas that are also happen to be industrial benefactors, Lebanon, Mount Juliet, Murfreesboro, and here where our office is in Franklin Cool Springs, we are evaluating more multifamily projects as well.
So when you think about Nashville and those areas that you just mentioned, what submarkets of the greater Nashville area do you see the next wave of new development? Is it the ones you mentioned, or are there others that you haven't mentioned yet?
No, I think it's pretty much again, I'll piggyback on David in the industrial space where we are being the most active. Wilson County has been one of the areas that we've seen the most growth, and I think that will continue. Rutherford, even Murray County, we're evaluating more and more opportunities. As David said, capital and tenant demand is really looking for infill sites in the Davidson County area and to the extent the Rutherford County areas. Those are going to always be the hottest commodity, but land constraints and scarcity of available land is really end up pushing some of these tenants that may have historically been in the Davidson County area out towards Wilson County. So while Wilson County has traditionally been a bulk market in the industrial space, you see some of these large facilities of Nissan and Bridgestone and Amazon. We do believe that a trend will be some smaller products that we're able to compete on pricing with tenants that may have been traditionally in the Davidson County, Rutherford County areas.
Okay. So it looks like that it sounds like then that the developers that are, well, actually it sounds like from all of our sectors, the people that have been able to be flexible about what they're doing and being able to shift maybe faster than others and kind of figure it out. And those are from the office space and the demand that the companies are looking for, whether that be for the new space going forward or for the PPP things that they want the landlords to do now, to the restaurants in some areas that have figured out how to implement curbside pickup and where they were typically didn't do any of that or didn't do any of the delivery services. They all, if you figured out quickly how to change your direction and pivot, then I would think that it sounds to me like that we're probably going forward in a better position than most areas in the country, just based on what we hear from, I listened to a New York ICSC panel yesterday and Wednesday, and I heard some of that some of the things that some of the other cities and challenges that they have, we just don't have those on the scale that they do. So, which looks good for Nashville. So I guess my last question would be to everybody, if you could pick one word, and we'll start with David McGarren and kind of go through the list again. If you could pick one word that defined 2020 for you and one word that defined 2021, it could be the same word. What would your word be, and kind of why would that be your word? Some of them will be pretty obvious why you picked that word, but
well, you know, so I had a word. It doesn't define what I've been through with, 2020, because 2020, I said it's been a great year. But the first word that came to mind was cancel.
That's a good one. And what about 2021? Do you have a different word for that?
Do over.
Do over. Okay, David Baker.
I thought about it, and I'm using opportunity for both 20 and 21. I've had an outstanding year as well, and I think while we're frustrated a lot with what we're seeing in 20, and I'm nervous in 21 because we don't know even if the vaccine comes out and everybody's inoculated by summer, what that means to the retail industry. So, but it's created a lot of opportunity for those that want to take advantage of other people's issues. And so, yeah, I'm still bullish, but I'm always an opportunist and an optimist. So, that's kind of that's where I live.
Thank you. How about you, Sharon?
Well, for 2020, I mean, there's a lot of words, but let's nice. For 2020, I found myself being creative, think of different ways outside of the box to get things done and look at different ways to accommodate tenants and investors and owners. So I would use the word creative. And for 2021, I'm just going to be positive.
Very good. Thomas, how about you?
My word was going to be relentless. I'm glad I didn't know in March how long this would last and how many different chapters would unfold. And that just speaks to the business side of it. I think we've probably all had personal trials and tribulations as well. There's even been one thing after another that seemingly is not involved in COVID, and it's just a confluence of issues this year. So it's been relentless, and for that reason, I have hope for a brighter day. So my word for 2021 is hopeful.
Very good. And Patrick, how about you?
I'll reiterate everything everyone else said, but from the developer standpoint, my word is it's been a marathon. Just again, as a developer, COVID's affected projects in every stage of development. So whether we're almost near completion or whether we're pursuing a site, we've had to be really nimble and sometimes take a step back and re-strategize, adjust our pricing and expectations on the fly. So 2021 has definitely been a marathon looking back, but going forward, 2020. Going forward, 2021, my word is competitive. I think we're going to see continued growth, not only in population, but business growth. We're seeing continued growth, obviously, in the e-commerce and industrial space. So it's going to become more and more challenging to find good land, good opportunities. So I anticipate more and more competition.
Okay, well, to wrap it up, I will tell you my word for 2020 was boing, because it felt like every time I picked up the phone or had my list ready for the day of what I was going to do, it was boing. And so my day got completely hijacked by something else that we had to deal with. It just felt like that we were dodging lots of bullets this year. And then for 2021, I would say that my word is also like Thomas's. My word is hopeful. So, and it sounds to me like Nashville, we do have some things to be very hopeful about and very grateful for. So I appreciate all the time that you guys gave us on the panel. I didn't see any questions in the chat room for us other than the one that David McGarren answered. So I just thank you all for participating. This has been a great session. I'm sure there were lots of notes taken, and I even took some shorthand. So I may be reaching back out to you on a couple of things. So thank you guys, and I hope you all have a happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We will have it up on YouTube within a week or so y'all can go back and watch it again if you want, and send it to your friends, send it to people that missed it. Real quick, I just love your comment about words, so I got to throw this up there. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I put this up this morning. A little different take on it, Rhonda, than what you were thinking, but the word I want to leave behind in 2020. I don't ever want to hear flatten the curve again, or you're on mute, or unprecedented. Right? So go ahead and find this post from me, and you can put your choice there or add to it if you want in the comments below. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful event. Look forward to seeing you live in 2021 when the vaccine works and everybody's healthy. That's crossing fingers, right? And we can get out of this and move on. Well, thank you. Wonderful panel, wonderful event. Thanks for hosting, and I'll see you all soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.